Hello, welcome to Biology, the scientific study of life. Species with a large impact. Certain species have an especially large impact on the structure of entire communities, either because they are highly abundant or because they play a pivotal role in a community dynamics. The impact of these species can occur either through their trophic interactions or through their influences on the physical environment. Dominant species are those species in a community that are the most abundant or that collectively have the highest biomass, the total mass of all individuals in a population. As a result, dominant species exert a powerful control over the occurrence and distribution of other species. For example, the abundance of sugar maples, the dominant plant species in many eastern North America forest communities, has a major impact on abiotic factors such as shading and soil, which in turn affect which other species live there. There is no single explanation for why species becomes dominant in a community. One hypothesis suggests that dominant species are most competitive in exploiting limited resources such as water or nutrients. Another explanation is that dominant species are most successful at avoiding predation or the impact of disease. This latter idea could explain the high biomass that invasive species generally introduced by humans that take hold outside their native range can attain in environments lacking their natural predators and pathogens. One way to discover the impact of a dominant species is to remove it from the community. Humans have carried out this type of experiments many times by accident. For example, the American chestnut was a dominant tree in eastern North American deciduous forests before 1910, making up more than 40% of a canopy top-story trees. Then humans accidentally introduced the fungal disease called chestnut blight to New York City via nursery stock imported from Asia. Between 1910 and 1950, this fungi attacks only chestnuts. Exerts strong control on community structure, not by numerical might, be by their pivotal ecological roles or niches. A good way to identify keystone species is by removal experiments, which is how ecologists report Bain of the University of Washington first developed the concept of keystone species. The Bisister Ocricius, as shown this figure, is a predator of mussels such as Malthus californius, as shown this figure, in rocky intertidal communities of western North America. Malthus is a dominant species, a superior competitors of space predation by Bicester offset this competitive edge and allows other species to use the space vacated by Malthus. After being removed Bicester from rocky intertidal areas, the abundant mussels were able to monopolize space and exclude their invertebrates and algae from attachment sites. When sea stars were present, 15 to 20 species of invertebrates and algae occurred in the intertidal zone. But after experimental removal of Bicester species, diversity quickly declined to fewer than 5 species. Bicester thus acts as a keystone species, exerting an influence on the whole community that is not reflected in its abundance. The sea otter Enhydra lutris, a keystone predator in the North Pacific, offers another example. Sea otters feed on sea urchins, and sea urchins feed mainly on kelp. In areas where sea otters are abundant, sea urchins are rare and kelp forests are well developed. Where sea otters are rare, sea urchins are common, and kelp is almost absent. Over the last 20 years, killer whales have been preying on sea otters as the whale's usual prey has declined. As a result, sea otter populations have declined precipitously in large areas of the coast of western Alaska, as shown in this figure. Um, Sometimes at rates as high as 25% per year. The loss of this keystone species has allowed sea urchin populations to increase, resulting in the destruction of kelp forests. Ecosystem engineers foundation species. Some organisms exert their influence not through their trophic interactions, but by using physical changes in the environment that affect the structure of the community. Such organisms may alter the environment through their behavior or by virtue of their large collective biomass, as shown in this figure. An example of a species that dramatically alters its physical environment is the beaver, which through a tree uh, filling and dam building can transform landscapes on a very large scale. Species with such effects are called ecosystem energy or engineers, or to avoid implications of conscious intent and foundation species. By altering the structure or dynamics of the environment, foundation species act as facilitators that have positive effects on the survival and reproduction of some of the other species in the community. For example, the modified soils, the black rush juncus, Gerardia, as shown this figure, increases the species richness in some zones of New England salt marshes. Juncus helps prevent salt build up in the soil by shading the soil surface, which reduces evaporation. Junks also prevents the salt marsh soils from becoming anoxic, as it transports oxygen to its below ground tissues. Sally Hacker and Mark Barnes of Brown University uncovered some of Junk's facilitation effects through removal experiments. When they removed Junkos from study plots in a New England salt marsh, three other plants species died out. Hicker and Berners suggest that without Junk's, the upper middle intertidal zone would support approximately 50% fewer plant species.